The grand hall of the Valorian Empire fell silent when Empress Seravin refused the third suitor in as many days. Lord Catherine's face shifted through 3 shades of violet, the Valorian equivalent of mortal embarrassment, before he gathered what remained of his dignity and retreated from the crystalline throne platform. The assembled nobles watched with barely concealed satisfaction. Another failure. Another rejection. Another crack in the foundation of an empress who ruled alone. Your Radiance. High Counselor Vorath stepped forward, his ceremonial robes rustling against the polished floor. The succession protocols are clear. An unbonded empress weakens the throne. The noble houses grow. Restless. Seravin's silver eyes did not waver. The noble houses may voice their concerns through proper channels, Counselor. I will not bind myself to political convenience. With respect, Vorath's tone suggested anything but. You have rejected every suitable candidate from the 7 systems. The whispers say you are incapable of forming a proper bond. That the death of your consort mother left you. Choose your next words with exceptional care. The warning hung in the air like a blade. Vorath lowered his head, but Seravin saw the ghost of a smile at the corner of his mouth. He had planted exactly what he intended to plant. By tomorrow, every noble house would be discussing the Empress's supposed inability to bond, her supposed brokenness. She dismissed the court with a gesture, and retreated to her private observation chamber, where the light of 3 moons painted silver rivers across the floor. Her reflection in the viewport showed what the nobles saw: perfect composure, unreadable features, the mask of imperial authority. The reflection did not show the hollow ache that had lived in her chest for 7 cycles, the loneliness that no royal protocol could address. Her personal console chimed, a notification from the Cultural Exchange Archives. The human educational materials she had requested months ago, finally translated and compiled. A distraction, nothing more. The humans were a minor species, barely a century into interstellar travel, considered by most to be little more than a curiosity. But their art had caught her attention during a diplomatic function. Strange, emotional, unrefined by Valorian standards. She began to read. Hours passed. Then days. She found herself returning to the archive repeatedly, drawn by something she could not name. Human literature. Human music. Human concepts of connection that seemed almost primitive in their directness. And yet, one file contained communications from a human cultural attaché named Marcus Cole. His reports were different from the formal diplomatic exchanges she typically encountered. He wrote about Valorian art with genuine curiosity, asked questions that revealed careful observation, admitted confusion without shame. In one message he had described watching a Valorian grief ritual and feeling moved despite understanding nothing of its meaning. Perhaps understanding isn't always the point, he had written. Perhaps witness is enough. She traced the words on her screen, an action that would have scandalized any Valorian who saw it. 3 months later she arranged to meet him. The Human Cultural Exchange Station orbited a neutral moon, a small, functional facility that housed perhaps 24 humans engaged in various diplomatic and academic pursuits. Marcus Cole was not what she expected. He was neither tall nor physically imposing. His dark hair showed threads of gray, and there were lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and sorrow. He moved with a slight hesitation, as though his body carried some invisible weight. When presented to her, he did not prostrate himself as Valorian protocol demanded. He simply bowed, a human gesture of respect, and met her eyes. Your Radiance, he said. Thank you for this opportunity. I've been studying Valorian poetry for 3 years now, and I still feel like I'm missing something essential. I was hoping you might help me understand. No flattery, no political maneuvering, just honest admission of limitation. You are direct, she observed. I apologize if that's offensive. Humans aren't very good at the other way. It is not offensive. She paused, surprised by her own response. It is unusual. Over the following weeks she found excuses to return to the station. Academic consultations, she told her court. Cultural oversight. The nobles accepted these explanations with varying degrees of skepticism, but none dared question directly. Marcus showed her human poetry, chaotic, emotional things that broke every rule of Valorian composition. He played human music that seemed to have no structure at all, just raw feeling translated into sound. And he listened when she explained Valorian traditions, never dismissing them as primitive or praising them as superior. He simply tried to understand. Why do you hide? He asked one evening as they sat in the station's small observation lounge. I am Empress. I do not hide. You hide, he repeated gently. You speak to me differently than you speak to your court. With them, You're a statue. With me? He shrugged. You're a person. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No one had ever dared. I was dying in a hospital bed, he said quietly, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. 3 years ago. Cancer. A human disease. The doctor said I had weeks, maybe days. My wife had passed the year before. My daughter stopped visiting because it hurt her too much to watch. I was alone and I was dying. And I thought, that's it. That's how it ends. Seravin found she could not look away from him. But then this experimental treatment came through. Alien technology, actually. Valorian medical research that some human doctor had adapted. Long shot, they said. Probably wouldn't work. He smiled, and there was old pain in it. It worked. I got a second chance. So I decided to spend it trying to understand the people who gave it to me. That's why I'm here. You crossed space because you felt gratitude towards strangers? I crossed space because I was given more time, and I didn't want to waste it being afraid. He finally looked at her. Why are you really here, Your Radiance? And please don't say cultural oversight. The question should have offended her. Instead, it broke something open. Because in my entire life she heard herself say, no one has ever simply asked me what I want. The silence between them shifted, became something else. She did not return to the station for 2 weeks after that. The vulnerability she had shown terrified her. Voreth and his allies had begun openly questioning her fitness to rule, citing her unusual interest in primitive species as evidence of instability. 3 more noble houses had withdrawn their support. And through it all, she found herself thinking of a human who had faced death alone, and emerged wanting only to understand. When she finally returned, Marcus was different. Pale ductile. Thinner. He smiled when he saw her, but the smile cost him something. You're unwell, she said. The treatment bought me time, he replied. It didn't buy me forever. The doctors say the cancer is back. More aggressive this time. He must have seen something in her expression because he added quickly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. You didn't come here to deal with human mortality. How long? Months. Maybe a year if I'm lucky. He tried to smile again. I've been lucky before. Something cracked in Seravin's chest. Something that had been frozen for 7 long cycles. I will have my physicians examine you. Valorian medicine. Your radiance. His voice was gentle. You can't fix everything. Some things you just have to be present for. She did not know how to respond to that. In Valorian culture, illness was a problem to be solved or a weakness to be hidden. The idea of simply being present, of witnessing without fixing, it was foreign. It was human. It was, she realized, exactly what she had needed 7 years ago when her consort mother died, and no one had been willing to simply sit with her grief. Then I will be present, she said. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither fully understood. The noble council convened 3 days later, and Seravin faced the full force of their accumulated disapproval. The Empress spends imperial resources visiting a dying primitive, Lord Kethron declared, his earlier humiliation transformed into righteous anger. While the noble houses await a proper bonding, she consorts with creatures who cannot even cure their own diseases. The human in question, Seravin replied coolly, has contributed more to cross-cultural understanding in 3 years than 3 years than this council has achieved in 3 decades. Understanding. Voreth pronounced the word like a curse. What use is understanding with species beneath our notice? The Empress's judgment has been compromised. We must consider whether she remains fit to finish that sentence, counselor, and discover how fit I remain. The chamber fell silent. I am Empress by right of blood and bond, Seravin continued. My consort mother chose me as her successor, not because I was the strongest or the most politically convenient, but because she believed I could see beyond the limitations of tradition. You may question my choices. You may not question my authority. She swept from the chamber before anyone could respond, but she knew this was only a temporary victory. The nobles were circling now, scenting weakness. Her continued association with Marcus had become a liability. The rational choice was clear. End the contact, focus on finding an acceptable consort, consolidate power through traditional means. She went to the station instead. Marcus was in the medical bay when she arrived, surrounded by monitoring equipment that beeped and hummed with foreign rhythms. He looked smaller somehow, diminished in ways that had nothing to do with physical size. They told me you might not come back, he said. Political complications. The complications are irrelevant. They're not, though. Are they? He struggled to sit up, waving off the medical attendant who moved to help. I've been reading about Valorian court politics. Your visits here are being used against you. Some faction leader named Vorath is saying you've lost your capacity for proper bonding. You've been researching my political situation. I've been worried about you. He said it simply, without artifice. Is that strange? An insignificant human worrying about an empress? Seravin found herself sitting in the chair beside his bed. The action was automatic, unplanned. The sort of casual intimacy that would have been unthinkable in her own court. You are not insignificant, by any objective measure. There are no objective measures for significance. She paused, searching for words in a language that suddenly felt inadequate. You see me. Not the empress, not the political symbol. Me. In 7 years, you are the first person who has managed that. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. What happened 7 years ago? My consort mother died. The words came easier than expected. She was... The Valorian language does not have a word for what humans call mother. She was my genetic contributor, my primary guardian, my first bondmate. She taught me to rule. She taught me to feel. And when she died, everyone wanted me to perform the proper rituals, speak the proper words, resume the proper duties. No one wanted to simply be present. I'm sorry. Do not apologize. You have nothing to. I'm not apologizing for causing it. I'm sorry you went through that alone. He reached out, hesitated, then let his hand rest on the edge of the bed near hers. Not touching, but present. Humans do that. We say, I'm sorry when we mean I wish I could carry some of this for you. Seravin looked at his hand. Frail. Mortal. Human. Attached to a being whose entire species was considered barely worth acknowledging by Valorian standards. She moved her fingers until they brushed against his. The touch was electric, not in a physical sense but in something deeper. She had touched thousands of beings, formal contacts, ritual gestures, political necessities. This was different. This was choice. The council will interpret this as weakness, she said. Is it weakness? I do not know. She did not withdraw her hand. I know only that when I am here, the weight feels lighter. Then keep coming here. His fingers curled gently around hers. For as long as I have, let me be useful for something. You are not useful. You are. She searched for the word. Necessary. The medical equipment beeped steadily in the silence that followed. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled in their eternal patterns, indifferent to the small drama unfolding in this tiny station. But for Seravin, the universe had shifted on its axis. Over the following weeks, she came to the station whenever she could escape her duties. They talked about art, philosophy, the nature of connection across species. Marcus taught her human card games and laughed when she struggled with concepts her strategic mind should have mastered easily. She read him Valorian poetry and watched his face as he tried to find the meaning beneath the formal structures. She learned that he had been a teacher before his illness, that his daughter's name was Elena, and she had stopped speaking to him after her mother's death because grief had made them both say things they could not take back. That he had spent the last year before his diagnosis living in a small apartment, barely living at all. The cancer almost felt like a relief, he admitted one evening. An excuse to stop pretending I was going to be okay. And now? He looked at her with something indefinable in his eyes. Now I have a reason to want more time. The admission hung between them, unacknowledged but understood. Meanwhile, the political situation deteriorated. Vorath had formed an alliance with 3 major houses, openly questioning the validity of an unbonded empress. Whispers circulated about intervention, about forcing a bonding through council authority. Her aunt, Lady Marin, her consort mother's sister, and her last remaining family connection, came to warn her. They are preparing a formal challenge, Marin said. If you do not announce a bonding within the lunar cycle, they will invoke the succession protocols. Force a regent upon you. Let them try. Seravin. Marin's use of her personal name was shocking. I have watched you since Kira's death. I have seen you retreat behind your walls. Refuse every connection, rule alone when you were meant to rule bonded. I understood. You were grieving. But this path leads to destruction. Not just for you, but for everything your mother built. You think I should accept some political match? Bind myself to a noble who sees me as nothing but a means to power? I think you should fight for what matters to you. Marin's silver eyes were sharp. And I think perhaps you have finally found something that matters. Seravin stared at her aunt. You know. I know that you returned from that human station less empty than when you left. I know that for the first time in 7 years, you speak of something other than duty. Marin's expression softened. I also know that what you are considering is unprecedented. Possibly impossible. Certainly dangerous. Then why tell me to fight? Because your mother would have wanted you to live, Seravin. Not just rule. Live. Marin touched her niece's hand, a rare gesture of affection. Whatever you decide, I will stand with you. But decide quickly. The council moves within days. The crisis came sooner than expected. Seravin was at the station when her personal communicator erupted with emergency protocols. Voreth had accelerated his timeline. The council had convened without her presence, a technical violation of procedure, but one they clearly felt confident enough to attempt. You must return immediately, her aide's voice crackled through the transmission. They are voting on emergency succession measures. Lady Marin is attempting to delay, but I'm returning now. She turned to find Marcus already struggling out of bed, despite the medical attendant's protests. What's happening? Political coup. I must go. Then go. He caught her arm as she moved toward the door, his grip surprisingly strong. But Seravin, come back. Whatever happens there, come back. She looked at his hand on her arm, at the desperation in his eyes, at this fragile human who somehow had become the center of her gravity. I will return, she said. I promise. The journey back to Valoria Prime took 18 hours at maximum speed. 18 hours to plan, to strategize, to prepare for a confrontation she had been avoiding for 7 years. By the time she entered the Grand Hall, the vote was already underway. And therefore, in accordance with the succession protocols, this council moves to install a regent until such time as the Empress demonstrates fitness to... This council, Seravin's voice cut through the chamber like a plasma blade, Hashasma blade. No authority to install anything. The nobles turned. Voreth's expression flickered, surprise quickly masked by confidence. Your Radiance. How fortunate you could join us. We were merely discussing concerns about the stability of the throne. You were attempting to seize power while I was occupied elsewhere. Let us not pretend otherwise. She ascended to the throne platform, every step deliberate. You cite the succession protocols. Very well. Let us examine them. The protocols permit council intervention only when an empress is demonstrably incapable of forming a bond. Tell me, counselor, what evidence do you present of incapability? You have rejected every suitable candidate. I have rejected every candidate this council deemed suitable. That is choice, not incapability. She turned to address the full chamber. The protocols were written to ensure strong leadership, not to force bondmates upon unwilling rulers. My consort mother understood this. She bonded for love, not politics, and her rule was stronger for it. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The invocation of the beloved former empress was deliberate, a reminder that Seravin was not just a ruler, but a legacy. Pretty words, Voreth said. But words do not address the fundamental problem. You refuse all candidates. You spend your time with primitive species. You show no indication of ever forming a proper bond. The throne requires certainty, your Radiance. The noble houses require assurance. Then, let me provide assurance. Seravin drew a breath. I have formed a bond. Silence. Then chaos. Impossible with whom? This is a trick. I invoke the right of declaration, Seravin continued, her voice rising above the tumult. I name my bondmate before this council, and claim the protections of tradition for our union. Voreth's face had gone pale. The right of declaration requires the bondmate to be present, to be verified by the council. You cannot simply... I cannot. Watch me. She activated her personal communicator, Lady Marin. Please escort our guest to the Grand Hall. The minutes that followed were the longest of Seravin's life. She stood on the throne platform, surrounded by hostile nobles, her entire future dependent on a declaration that broke every unwritten rule of Valorian society. Then the doors opened. Marcus walked in. He was pale, clearly exhausted from travel, supported on one side by Lady Marin. But he walked. He entered the Grand Hall of the Valorian Empire under his own power, and made his way to the base of the throne platform, where he looked up at Seravin with tired eyes and a small smile. Sorry I'm late, he said. The transport hit traffic. The chaos that followed made the earlier response seem muted by comparison. Lords and ladies shouted over each other, protocol forgotten in shock and outrage. A human, this is obscenity. The traditions cannot. The traditions, Seravin's voice cut through once more, speak of bond, not species. The traditions speak of choice, not approval. I have made my choice. This council may accept it or challenge it through proper channels, but it will not be changed. Voreth stepped forward, his composure finally cracking. You would bond with this creature? This dying primitive? You would destroy centuries of precedent for a being who will be dead within the year? Marcus flinched. Seravin saw it, the hit landing exactly where it was meant to. Yes, she said, descending from the platform. I would bond with a dying man, because he has shown me more of what bonding means in our brief time together than this council has in my entire life. She reached Marcus's side and took his hand in hers, publicly, irrevocably. The protocols require verification of bond, she continued. Very well. Verify this. I feel his presence when he is near. I feel his absence when he is not. His pain diminishes me. His joy elevates me. By every measure of Valorian bond science, we are connected. She looked at Voreth. If you wish to challenge the bond itself, I invite you to try. But know that if you fail, if the verification proves our connection genuine, the penalty for false accusation is exile. The threat landed. Voreth's ally shifted uncomfortably. Bond verification was exact science. If Seravin was bluffing, she would have already lost. Her willingness to undergo it suggested she was not bluffing at all. This changes nothing, Voreth said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Even if the bond is genuine, a human consort cannot fulfill the political requirements of. The political requirements are my concern, not yours. Unless you wish to invoke challenge. The silence stretched. Then, one by one, the noble houses began to bow, some with genuine acceptance, others with barely concealed resentment, but all acknowledging the reality of what had occurred. Voreth was the last. His bow was shallow, perfunctory, a promise of future conflict. But for now, it was enough. Later, in her private chambers, Seravin sat beside Marcus as he struggled to recover from the exertion of the day. That was either very brave or very stupid, he said. The two are often indistinguishable. I'm serious, Seravin. I'm dying. You've tied yourself to a dying man. When I'm gone, when you're gone, I will grieve. As I grieved for my mother. As I will grieve for anyone I truly love. She took his hand. But I will not regret choosing to love in the first place. That is what you taught me. I didn't teach you anything. I just talked too much and made bad jokes about card games. You showed me what it means to be present. To witness. To choose connection over safety. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his, a Valorian gesture of profound intimacy. You gave me back my ability to feel, Marcus. Do not diminish that gift. He raised his hand, trembling slightly, and cupped her cheek. I don't deserve you. That is my decision to make. She kissed him then, gently, carefully, as though he might break. And perhaps he might. But in that moment, neither of them cared. The months that followed were both the best and worst of Seravin's life. Marcus's condition stabilized briefly under the combined attention of Valorian and human physicians, but everyone understood the reprieve was temporary. They used the time well, establishing precedents for human-Valorian diplomatic relations, creating cultural exchange programs that would outlast them both, building something meaningful from what had begun as an impossible connection. Seravin introduced Marcus to the Valorian people not as a curiosity, but as a consort. His directness, his humor, his utter lack of pretension won unexpected allies. Lady Marin became a regular visitor to their shared chambers, and Seravin sometimes found her aunt and her bondmate engaged in long conversations about topics she could not follow. He reminds me of Kireth, Marin told her once. Not in his manner, they could not be more different. But in his effect on you, how so? He makes you more yourself. Less the mask, more the person behind it. Marin smiled. Your mother would have liked him very much. There were difficulties, of course. Voreth's faction continued to agitate, though their influence waned as Seravin's bond with Marcus proved stable and genuine. Some noble houses refused to acknowledge a human consort, while others saw opportunity in this unprecedented alliance. Human politicians arrived seeking favorable terms. Seravin navigated their requests with the skill of lifelong training. And through it all, Marcus weakened. He hid it well. The exhaustion, the pain, the growing difficulty in maintaining the facade of wellness. But Seravin saw. She felt it through their bond, an ever-present shadow that colored their remaining time together. One evening, 3 months after the council confrontation, she found him standing at the viewport of their shared chambers, looking out at stars he had crossed to reach her. I talked to Elena today, he said without turning. My daughter. First time in 2 years. Seravin moved to stand beside him. How? You arranged it. Don't pretend otherwise. I know your communication codes were involved in establishing the link. He was crying, she realized. Quietly, without drama, tears tracking down weathered cheeks. She said, she was sorry. I said, I was sorry. We both said a lot of things that needed saying. I am glad. She wants to meet you. The alien empress who convinced her father to fight for more time. He laughed, a broken sound. I told her you didn't convince me of anything. You just made more time seem worth fighting for. Seravin took his hand. She is welcome here. Whenever she wishes. She's coming next month. I told her to hurry. He finally looked at her, and the acceptance in his eyes made something inside her crack. The doctors said 6 weeks. Maybe 8. The treatments aren't working anymore. She had known. Of course she had known. But hearing the words made it real in a way that knowledge alone could not. Then we have 6 weeks, she said. We will not waste them. The final weeks passed too quickly, marked by small moments that became precious in their scarcity. Elena arrived. A young woman with her father's eyes and her mother's stubbornness. And the three of them formed an unlikely family. Marcus insisted on attending council sessions when he could, sitting beside Seravin's throne in a position of honor that made several nobles visibly uncomfortable. This is ridiculous, Lord Catherine muttered during one session. A human too weak to stand, seated at the right hand of the Empress. Marcus heard him. I may be weak, he said, his voice quiet but carrying. But I'm present, which is more than I can say for some of the actual work of this council. Even Catherine had no response to that. When the end came, it came gently. Marcus woke one morning unable to rise. The physicians confirmed what everyone already knew. Hours, not days. Elena held one hand. Seravin held the other. Lady Marin stood vigil at the door, ensuring no one disturbed what could not be disturbed. No regrets, Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. You understand? Whatever comes after, no regrets, no regrets. Seravin agreed, though her throat burned with the effort of speech. You made me feel significant. In a universe full of empires and wonders and things I couldn't begin to understand. You made one dying teacher feel like he mattered. You do matter. You will always matter. He smiled. That same smile she had seen in their first meeting. Tired but genuine. Tell the council I'm sorry for all the trouble. They do not deserve your apology. No, he agreed, but I'm giving it anyway. That's what humans do. His grip on her hand tightened briefly. I was dying in a hospital bed. And you crossed 7 galaxies just to hold my hand. I would cross 7 more. I know. His eyes were closing. That's why it meant something. His last breath was soft, almost imperceptible. Seravin felt the moment of departure through their bond, a gentle withdrawal, a light dimming, an absence that would echo through the rest of her life. She did not cry. Not then. The Empress held her bondmate's hand as he passed, and the Empress did not cry. Later, alone in her chambers, she wept until she had nothing left. The funeral was a hybrid of traditions, Valorian rites of passage and human customs of remembrance. Representatives from both species attended, united in a way they had never been before. Elena spoke of her father's life before Seravin. Seravin spoke of the man she had come to know. He taught me that witness is enough, she told the assembled mourners. That presence matters more than solutions. That love does not require an understanding of forever, only the courage to choose today. Orath attended the funeral. He did not speak, but neither did he disrupt. Some things, even politics, could not touch. In the years that followed, Seravin ruled with a wisdom tempered by loss. She established the Cole Institute for Cross-Species Understanding, fostered diplomatic relations between humans and Valorians, and ensured that what she and Marcus had begun did not end with his death. She did not bond again. Some whispered that she could not, others said she chose not to. The truth was simpler. She had found what she was looking for, and finding it once was enough. Elena visited annually, eventually bringing her own children. Marcus's grandchildren, who called the Empress of Valoria grandmother Sira, and pestered her with questions about human card games. Lady Marin became her closest advisor, guiding her through decades of rule with steady wisdom. And sometimes, late at night, Seravin would stand at the viewport of her chambers and look out at the stars. 7 galaxies away, somewhere in the vast darkness, a small planet orbited a yellow sun. A planet where a man had once laid dying, alone and forgotten, until an empress crossed the universe to hold his hand. He had asked for no regrets. She had none. Only gratitude, endless and undying, for the time they had shared, and the truth they had proven to a skeptical universe. That love is not measured in years, but in presence. In witness. In the courage to reach across the void and simply say, I am here. The stars burned on, indifferent and eternal. But in the grand hall of the Valorian Empire, a small portrait hung beside the throne. A human face, lined with laughter and sorrow, looking out at the empire he had helped transform. Below it, a single inscription, in both Valorian script and English. Some things you just have to be present for. The Empress smiled when she passed it each morning. And she was never alone again.